Rational equations. Now, rational equations we kind of did on the first day of chapter 4, which was, hey, where does this thing equal 0? So the difference between rational equations and rational expressions and rational functions is that rational equations, I get to get rid of denominators. I get to multiply everything by that common denominator and get rid of the denominator. With rational equations or rational functions, I don't get to get rid of the denominator. I will have a denominator, and that's going to give me my vertical asymptotes, restrictions on my domain. For rational expressions, all I can do is simplify. There's no getting rid of denominators unless it's simplified out. So if they're asking me to solve this, then the first thing I'm going to do is figure out what my LCD is, the lowest common denominator. So I look at each one of these pieces, and there's p squared, and there's p, and this is over 1. This is over 1. And so my lowest common denominator is p squared. So I'm going to take my function, my equation here, which is 1 plus 1 over p minus is equal to negative 12 over p squared. And I'm going to multiply everything by p squared. The reason I'm doing that is so that I can clear my fractions and I can start solving. My first one, I'm going to get p squared, and then I'm going to get plus 1p, and then is equal to negative 12. Is there any questions so far?
The 1 over p, I thought it was 7 over p.
Oh, yeah, thank you. It's 7 over p.
Oh, you're fine. I just thought I knew.
No, you're right. You're right. It's 7 over p. That's what happens when I'm not completely well. It's a total shenanigans. You gotta watch me. I'm sketchy. Sketchy as no other. Okay, so this is a quadratic, and I'm going to treat it as such. So I have p squared plus 7p plus 12 is equal to 0. I'll bring everything to one side. And I'm going to factor it if I can factor it. If I can't, I can throw in the quadratic. So it's going to be p plus 4, p plus 3 is equal to 0. And so my two p values is p is equal to negative 4 from the first one and negative 3 from the second one. Now, I always have to compare my answers to my p-value. Well, my p-value, my lowest common denominator is that p is equal, my lowest common denominator is p squared, but p can't equal 0. So that's the restriction. And neither one of those numbers are my restrictions, so those are good to go. Now, if I look at my next example, I'm going to do similar like that. So I'm going to have 7 over z minus 8 minus 4 over z plus 8 is equal to 5 over z squared minus 64. Now, if it's not already factored in the denominator, the first one was, I encourage you to consider factoring it to make your life a little bit easier so that you can see what your lowest common denominator is. It's not necessarily going to be all three of those denominators multiplied together. And in this case, it's not, because the denominator is going to factor into z plus 8 and z minus 8. So my lowest common denominator are going to be those two together, so z plus 8 and z minus 8. Now my restrictions are x can't be positive and negative 8. So if any of my answers are positive and negative 8, then those are extraneous solutions. So as before, I'm going to multiply everything by my lowest common denominator, which happens to be z. Let me give myself some more room. It's going to be z plus 8, z minus 8. And then everywhere, so LCD, just to save myself some time, I'm going to write LCD. Now, for the first grouping, the z minus 8s cancel, leaving me 7, z plus 8. My second grouping, my z plus 8s cancel, leaving me z minus 8. And then on my other side of my equal sign, I just get 5, because my LCD will cancel out. So I end up with 7z plus 56 minus 4z plus 32 is equal to 5. Check my math there. I am pretty sketchy. Is that right? 7 times 8 is 56. Negative 4 times negative 8 is 32. Is that right?
Hey, what was it?
7 times 8?
6.
Okay, cool.
And then 4 times 8, yeah, it's 32.
Okay, so let's add up our like terms. This and this being like terms, and so I get 3z. And then what's 56 plus 32?
88.
Is equal to 5. Now I'm going to subtract 88 from both sides, so 3z is going to be equal to negative 83. Is that right?
Yeah.
Divide both sides by 3. Negative 83 over 3. And I don't think that gets any better than that, does it? 3 doesn't go into 83. The reason I know that is 3 plus 8 is not a number divisible by 3, so that's as good as that
Yeah,
gets.
27.66666.
Okay, so that's how you do that one. I'm going to go grab one more, and then we'll talk about composition of functions today. So hang on a second. Let's take a look at this next example. So the first thing we want to do is we want to factor all denominators if they're not already factored. And I can see for this denominator right here that this is not factored. So we do need to factor this. This will factor into b minus 6 and b minus 3. So as I look across at all of the denominators, I notice that my lowest common denominator will be v minus 6 multiplied by v minus 3. So that's my lowest common denominator. So I have v minus 10 over v minus 6, v minus 3 is equal to 4 v minus 3 minus 8 v minus 6. Now, with my lowest common denominator, v cannot equal 3 or 6. So when I get down to the very end, if my answer is 3 or 6, then those would be extraneous solutions. So let's go ahead and multiply each term by v minus 6, v minus 3, so that we can cancel out the denominators. So v minus 6, v minus 3 is going to get multiplied all the way through. So what ends up happening on this term on the left-hand side is that my denominator and my LCD cancel out, and I'm just left with v minus 10. On the other side of the equal sign, the v minus 3's cancel themselves out, leaving me 4 v minus 6 minus 8. And then on my last term, the v minus 6 cancel themselves out, leaving me 8 v minus 3. I'm going to go ahead and distribute everything through and combine up like terms. So v minus 10 is equal to 4v, and I wrote x, 4v minus 24 minus 8v, and I put x again, 8v plus 24. Combining up like terms on the right-hand side, my 24s do cancel themselves out. So I have v minus 10 is equal to negative 4v. I'm going to bring my v's to the right, so I have negative 10 is equal to negative 5v. Dividing both sides by a negative 5, I've got positive 2 is equal to v. And that's not any of my extraneous solutions, so that is my solution.